thank you so much for coming. And we're so excited to have you here to engage in this conversation of what it looks like to use social media for good. Social media is such like a loaded word that has also like social media has just got everything, right? And it produces so many emotions in us. So I'm excited to hear what Matt has to say on this. And so this is hosted by an organization called Cru, and Cru is a caring community passionate about connecting students to Jesus. And our ministry here in the Inland Empire is super great, and we're excited to invite you into this talk, but also DM me, Lyndall, or anybody else that you think is part of Cru staff here. So we have Tom, and we have Camille, and Walter. Go ahead and DM us if you have any questions about what Cru is, or what involvement in Cru would look like for you. Typically, we're on campuses in the Inland Empire, but right now we are virtual. And yeah, so we'd like to get to know you more. And we're excited you're here. So in the chat, we're gonna send out a Google form in the chat. Complete that, because at the end of the meeting, we're gonna give away a prize, and it's a good prize in my humble opinion. And yeah, right now the prize is coffee and water. So it's a great local beans from Arcade, and then a hydro flask is the prize. So if that sounds good to you, fill out that form, and we'd love to yeah, talk with you more if you're interested in hearing from us. And also, if you don't drink coffee, you can say, hey, can I get a substitute for that? And we will send you a substitute for coffee. That might even be like, yeah, it could even be something totally different. So just ask for that if you don't like coffee. Yeah, let me have someone put that in the slide or repost it. So that will be in the slides soon. Camille, if you could do that, that'd be awesome. And the next thing is, we have an awesome guest speaker here today. You know, it's such a interesting thing introducing other people, and like there's this tendency to want to like introduce them based on their resume. But the first thing I want to say about Matt is he is an encouraging human to be around. He's also a writer, speaker, and family man. He's got a few books. Well, yeah, more than a few books, because a few is 5, right? 3 to 5. So he's got more than a few books, and he has been on national television, and he's also been in the New York Times. So he's a writer with some clout, and he's a speaker as well, and a family man. He is from Portland, Oregon, and here's his website too, if you want to go check out some of his books. It's micheladas.com. So go check out what Matt's about, and yeah, what he's writing. So without further ado, our speaker for the night, Matt Micheladas.
Thank you. All right. Are you ready, kids?
Aye, aye, Captain.
All right. I can't hear you, but that's fine. Hey, as we're going along, oh, there's Camille saying aye, aye, Captain too. Good. As we're going on today, if you have questions, if you have comments, if you have angry disagreements, throw them in the chat, or if you want to come on and talk about it live with your voice, that is also acceptable. Just let us know. Throw your hand up. Social media. People all the time are telling us that social media is evil, it's addictive, it's all these different things. And here's the thing. Some of those things they're not wrong, right? Some of those things are true. But also, this has been a conversation that human beings have been having about technology literally forever. Anytime something new was made, we had this big conversation about, is this destroying humanity? And you look at stuff like, take movies. In 1915, there was a movie that came out called Birth of a Nation. I don't know if you have heard of this movie. There was a more recent movie that was kind of a response to that. Birth of a Nation was a story all about the noble men of the Ku Klux Klan and how they went out and did justice in the world, right? And the result of this movie, literally while the movie was in theaters, there was a guy that got out of the movie and was so excited by what he had seen that he went and killed a 15-year-old black kid in 1915. And there was a dude who watched this movie in 1915, and he suddenly had this idea like, what if I revitalize the Ku Klux Klan where I live? And he went on to create the largest Klan movement in the history of our country in his state, to the point that at one point, more than 25% of the people in his state were part of the Klan. Now, that's a pretty horrific set of events to come from one movie, right? And that's not even the full reality of what came from it. But afterwards, people weren't like, maybe we should stop letting white people make movies, right? We're still doing that. And there are good things that have come from movies and other places, but the technology was changing the world around it. And this is true of phones, right? People have murdered people with a phone call. This is part of reality. That technology, we often say kind of the truism, right? Technology isn't good or evil, it's how you use it. But what's interesting is this, we can go all the way back to the ancient Greeks. We have now today debates about whether the technology of writing was good for humanity or not. It's a really interesting conversation, actually. I mean, if you're a nerd, but I am, so I think it's interesting. But it's all about like, what if human memory gets shorter? Have you heard anyone say that about Google? I mean, they are saying it. They were saying that about writing back, many years ago, millennia ago. So anytime new technology comes along, humanity starts to ask this question: is this good or bad? Should we just be done with it? And there were literally people in ancient Greece who were saying writing is really bad and I'm going to have nothing to do with it, right? And they weren't completely wrong in objections. At the same time, I think we made a different decision, right? Going forward. So let me start with this. I'd love to hear in the comments. I'll go on a little bit, but I'd love to hear in the comments, what have you heard someone say, maybe a parent, maybe a teacher, maybe some other authority figure, maybe yourself, say about the negative side of social media? Why is it terrible? Why should you do less of it? And we'll be all inclusive here. So we're talking not just social media in the purest sense, but TikTok, YouTube, whatever you might do on the internet, whatever you might get up to. What are some of the negatives you've heard people say about that? Yeah, I'd love to see a few of them. Because obviously we're going to be talking about tonight is how do we use social media as a tool for good in the world. But I'd love to hear, has no one ever heard anything negative about social? It'll melt your brain. My parents. It'll melt your brain. Classic parenting move. Yeah, this is based completely on science, Allison. It's going to melt your brain. It's a waste of time. It's all fake. Okay, right? Like people aren't being honest about who they are. You should go study instead. You tend to compare yourself a lot to others. It causes people to compare themselves to others in a negative way. Yes. Short attention span, unrealistic standards. Okay, literally, I took my 11-year-old to the zoo today because she's on spring break, and we're literally, a foot from a lion. And she's like, I am so bored right now. And I was like, what is wrong with you? Is it the internet? Like, what is the problem? Lions are amazing. Show respect to this lion. Unrealistic standards. It gives off a fake persona of someone's life. It makes it look more positive and perfect than it really is. That's true. It's narcissistic, right? Yeah, this idea that becomes incredibly centered on yourself. What do I want? Who am I? How do I want people to see me? All these things. Now, we all know, because we spend an enormous amount of hours doing this, that there's some truth to some of these things. So we're not going to pretend that's not the case. But I mean, except for Allison's parents might need to walk it back just a little about the brain melting. But a lot of these other things are true, right? So what do we do? So let's embrace that. We're not going to focus on it. We know And let's talk about ways that we can do what's positive. And I'm going to give you a couple positive examples. Like one really obvious one, the Black Lives Matter movement started on Twitter. Really, now it doesn't mean there wasn't real world sort of activity already happening in a variety of ways. And obviously, it's in a long history of civil rights and social justice work. But basically, there were a few women who came together and they kind of started the hashtag in response to some violence that had happened. And it became something that started a conversation and has brought real world changes. It's pretty amazing. Really similar thing with Arab Spring, right? Some actual turnover of regimes in the Middle East that people were using social media as a way to connect with each other to make their plans for what they were going to do to try and make their countries better places. Now, whether they were successful, whether we agree politically, whatever, it doesn't matter. I'm saying is good things can come. And here's two from my life. My best friend died from cancer a few years ago. And it was 4 years that she was sick. And our family kind of helped take care of her. And there was a point where she was basically running out of money. And she was like, I don't know what to do. I don't have enough money to make it through the rest of the treatments this year. I didn't have enough money. You know, we were talking to our friends, they didn't have enough money. We did a fundraiser and raised like 20 grand for her, which was enough for more than a year, which is pretty amazing. That was social media. It was all social. We didn't call anybody. We didn't like send a letter to powerful friends. We put it on Facebook. We put it on Twitter. We put it on Instagram. And people who were connected to us shared, and people who weren't connected to us shared. So it went beyond even, there were people giving that none of us knew, directly knew, right? It was like a friend of a friend or a friend of a friend of a friend. That's pretty amazing, actually. It's like this rallying of community. The other thing that's amazing is my current best friend, which you know I bump him up when one passes away. So he was number two, now he's number one. It's fine. Um, he became my best friend because he legitimately stalked me on the internet. He like read one of my books and he liked it. And so he wrote a review and then he'd send me little notes every once in a while, like on Twitter or Facebook or whatever. So I was kind of familiar with his name. And now he'll tell me his wife is like, oh my gosh, every time you commented on something, he's like, oh my gosh, Matt commented on my comment, you know, or whatever. And then he invited me to come speak at an event he was running. I stayed with him and his wife for the weekend. And we started a podcast together. And I talk to him like 4 times a week now. We've never lived in the same place. We've been in the same room together maybe 6 times. And yeah, my closest friend outside of my family, right? That's all because of social media. That's pretty cool. So yeah, and I mean SpongeBob is someone who's gotten a lot of continued attention because of memes, and I think that's really a good thing about the internet too. Glad they didn't murder you in your sleep, Matt. You know, it's amazing how often someone says to me, it's good that someone didn't murder you in your sleep. I think I'm just that kind of guy that you look at and go, someone's going to murder him, probably in his sleep. We're not sure where, but probably in his sleep. So let's talk about how do we use social media for good? Okay, we're going to talk about it in the sense of in our personal lives, as well as in our relationships around us, in our community and the world. So let's start with this intention. Why am I using social media? What is my purpose? A lot of times we don't even think about this. And that's one of the ways that we end up using this tool in ways that is damaging or causes trouble, right? So for instance, when my kids were little, if they came up to me and were like, Dad, can I have a hammer? I'd be like, yeah, give them a hammer. They disappear for a little while and they come back and they go, okay, now I need an electric drill. And I'm like, okay. And I give it to them. And then they're like, okay, Dad, now I need a screwdriver. I'm like, what are you doing? I'm mad at my sister. Oh, okay, we need to have a conversation. What's your intention with all these tools, right? What is our purpose? Now, this was easier in the early days of the internet. So when I was at UC Riverside, the internet was barely a thing. We had like chat boards and you could download pictures off the internet, but it legitimately took 6 to 8 hours in our dorm anyway, because we were all on dial-up. So there was one girl in our hall that had a computer, and she'd be like, in the morning, we'd be having breakfast. She's like, after class, come by my room because I'm downloading a picture. Everyone's like, oh, okay. It was always a kitten. So in that sense, the internet has not changed. But people are like, that girl loves cats, man. She'll just turn on her computer in the morning and spend 8 hours downloading a picture of a cat. But she knew what she was doing, right? She was like, okay, here's my purpose this morning, and it's going to take me X amount of time. And now it's a little easier, right? You can look at 40 pictures of cats in 2 seconds. So you don't have to think about it as much. So why are we using social media? It might be different for different platforms, right? Sometimes it's to connect. Sometimes it's just for entertainment. Sometimes it's because we have a really specific purpose. We're trying to raise money. We're going to school. Sometimes it's just, gosh, I'm lonely, or I'm depressed, or I'm angry. And social media gives me an outlet of some sort for one of those things. And that's okay, right? I'm not saying don't do that. But what I'm saying is let's be aware of what our intent is in using this tool. Why am I picking up this tool? Sometimes, probably you've had this experience where you're like, I'm just going to open TikTok. And then 8 hours later, you're like, what happened to my day? Where'd it go? Like, because you didn't go in with an intent. You were just like, I love, like, my TikTok is mostly whales and like people doing stunts and dumb pranks. I like actual pranks, not fake pranks. That's literally all my TikTok is. So when I open it up, there is no redeeming value other than I'm like, a baby saw a whale? That's amazing, right? Look how cute it is. The baby loves it, and the whale appears to be watching. Yeah, I don't know. So why are we using it? What are we doing? So that you don't discover that you're using it for something other than what you intend, right? So that's the first thing. And the second thing's really closely connected. And that's when we're using social media, we need to have some self-awareness of ourselves, right? And also our emotions. And what I mean is this: what does social media make you feel? Do you get onto Twitter? This happens to me sometimes. Do you get onto Twitter and then you feel enraged after a little while? Yes, I do sometimes. Do you get sad? Do you get jealous? Multiple people mentioned the jealousy thing, right? Are you on Instagram looking at people's lives and you start to go like, ugh, I wish I was that person? You feel dissatisfied with your life. Doesn't mean it's wrong. It just means know that that's what happens with the way you're using social media now. So my 18-year-old daughter right now is hearing back from colleges about whether she got in or not. And so she deleted TikTok off her phone for right now, because what's happening is she got into college acceptance TikTok, right? And there'll be some kid going like, I have a 2.0 GPA. I murdered my mom's dog. I forgot to turn in one of the essays, and I had my garbage man write one of my letters of recommendation. And I just got into Harvard. I can't believe it. And she's like, oh, I hate everything about you. I want to murder you, right? And she's like, it's not good for me. It's making me feel bad about myself. It's making me angry at other people. So she's like, I just need to set it aside till I know what I'm doing. So she wasn't saying I'll never use TikTok again. She's just saying I need a break. And that was her thing, right? I didn't tell her TikTok's melting your brain. She figured it out for herself. So, and studies do show, right? Done all these studies that go like, people who use a lot of social media, they tend to feel more jealous, more depressed, more angry, more sad. I think that's not because of social media. I think that's because of the way we use it, our lack of awareness in how we use it. Okay. So, and it's totally legit to have to go like, yeah, that's there's a certain platform I don't use. I just don't like it. Right. So let me pause there for a second. Any questions so far? Any thoughts? Anything you're wondering about? That's pretty general and vague, right? Like, have a purpose, know what your purpose is, and then be aware of yourself. Here comes my 11-year-old right now. There she is. That's Micah.
Hi.
She's downstairs watching Lord of the Rings. So
I've gotten bored.
I told you.
4 hours.
It's 4 hours. Her attention span is not that long. Go see if you can find TikTok Lord of the Rings.
Nah.
Hey, I saw nah. Exactly, Courtney. Exactly. I saw someone with a hand up just a second ago. Did you guys see that? I'm not sure where did it go? Maybe that was accidental. I'm clicking through now. I don't see it. All right.
I just
Oh,
wanted
that
to,
was a wave. Oh, it was a wave. Okay, cool.
I just wanted to say now I'm gonna have to look for like the baby sees whale TikTok.
It's great. This lady's holding up a baby, and then the whale comes up out of the water, and the baby's like, whoa. And the whale, whale, it's hard to tell what a whale's feeling. They're not very expressive animals in my experience. Okay. So let's talk about two specific things about when you're on social media. Okay. So one is this. If you want to build a loving, like positive community in your social media sphere, you can. You absolutely can. I'll give you an example from my social media. So Facebook is weird, right? It's for older people, really. It's like my age. It started really with my age, so people in their 40s. And then some younger people found it and liked it. It was originally just for college students, which is why like my generation was just on the back end of getting into it. And then now all of my parents are on Facebook. So the demographic has aged up actually on Facebook. And what happens is, unlike your generation, there's a bunch of people who didn't grow up with social media on it. And a bunch of them are just badly behaved people. They don't know how to use it. They don't know what they're doing. And so they do awful things all the time. Like they just talk about politics, or they come in and they don't know how to use a thread, right? Oh my gosh. They're just all different things, right? They don't know when what they're saying is private. About once a week, I see someone in their 60s or 70s put a message like, "Hey son, call me." And those are the ones you're like glad that's all it is, right? Sometimes it's like really private stuff, and you're like, "Oh no, why'd you do that?" It depends who you're connected to. But here's something I started doing on my Facebook. I would put something kind of controversial on my wall, and then people would just come in and just be jerks to each other, just so mean, name calling, saying you're stupid, making fun of their spiritual lives because they agreed or disagreed with this or that thing. And what I finally decided was this. I was going to treat my social media space, the space that I controlled, which is just my wall, right? I was going to treat it like my living room. And my job in my living room is to be hospitable, which means that if you all came into my living room and one of you called another person a name that you didn't know, I would absolutely step in and go like, "Hey, that's not appropriate. Don't do that at my house." Right? That I would kind of I'd be the person responsible for making sure everyone's having a good time and liking each other and being kind even when they disagreed. Or when someone gets in a fight and I know why one friend is sensitive and the other doesn't get it, I might send a private message to my second friend and say, "Hey, did you know that my first friend is maybe sensitive about this because of this thing that just happened in his life?" And gives them context, right? So that's one thing that I spend a lot of time thinking about is how do I help my space, not MySpace, right? I do have a MySpace, but how do I help my internet space be a place that is hospitable? And what do I need to do to be a good host in that space? So what are my expectations of people's comments, the way they interact, things like that? And related to that is using the tools that the social media that you're on gives you for creating that. Social media folks, the people who run and create social media, are actually pretty worried about how toxic things get on their platforms because no one likes toxicity. At a certain point, you're like, "I'm done with this." So they're all trying to figure it out. They're trying to give us tools. So yeah, believe it or not, they don't want to be toxic hellholes. They are trying to fix it. So learn what the tools are, where you are. Now, if you're on 8chan or something, there's no tools. Fine, go there or don't. But if you're on any of the mainstream social media, there's a bunch of tools. So like this morning, I got a notice from Twitter that someone I reported, so one of my gay friends who's Catholic had tweeted about he literally just became Catholic, but he's like really upfront about his orientation also. had tweeted something about how happy he was to be in the Catholic Church. And someone responded to him with a slur against him because of his orientation. So I immediately just reported it. Now, Twitter's kind of slow, but this morning I got a note saying like that was hate speech. We had it removed, right? Totally do that. And I know there's people that are you trying to cancel that person? Are you a narc? Like, yeah, totally. I'm absolutely a narc when people are breaking the terms of their agreement, because the terms of service for these platforms are our social contract with each other. We're saying we're not going to use racial slurs. We're not going to use hate speech on this platform. So if somebody breaks that, good, kick them off. I don't care, because they're destroying what should be this community space for us. So I do also, like on Twitter, you can mute or block someone, right? I mute people all the time if they're jerks, but not enough that I'm like, I can't, that it affects my mental health. I actually kind of like muting people. It makes me laugh because I know they're like using a bunch of their time to say garbage to me. And I'm just like, I legitimately can't even hear them. So they get the benefit of still hearing what I'm saying. And I don't get the deficit of hearing what they're saying at all, which I find really entertaining in my head, right? I don't actually know what they're saying. And then I block people. I block people for one reason, typically. Well, two reasons. One is I'll block people for my mental health. If there's someone I can't stop thinking about them when they keep saying weird garbage to me, I'll block them. It's affecting my life, right? And sometimes I block people for their mental health. If there's someone that's constantly enraged by me, I'm like, you don't need to be a part of, you don't need to see what I'm saying. It's making your life worse. And that's not what I'm here to do. So, and no one likes being blocked, man. Like, I get it when people block me. I'm like, that's fine. I don't judge people for blocking me. I think it should be a sign of health, right? When you're blocking people, it's not always. The other reason I'll block people is sometimes I block them because I don't want people to think I approve of who they are on social media. So I have people I'm friends with in real life that their internet persona is such that I'm like, I can't be your friend on Facebook. I can't have anyone think I stand with the kind of stuff you say. It's not kind. It's not loving. It's hateful, in fact. And I'll tell people, I'll send them notes. I'll say, we can be friends in real life, but not on Facebook, right? Nobody loves that. But also I'm like, social media is not everything either. It's not my whole life. Now, a lot of times those people are like, well, I don't want to be in a relationship with you at all. And then I'm like, okay, well, that's a pretty good indication where we were relationally. So yeah, use the tools available to you. Block access to, it's okay. It's okay to do that. I know some of you are probably, I lean this way, but you're like, oh, I feel bad doing that. Don't feel bad at all. Just do it. Like, it makes your life better. It makes your community better when you do that. It doesn't mean you have to decide what that line is, but that doesn't mean, you always have to do it or never can do it, but figure out when you need to block people or mute them or report them. By the way, when I report people who've been abusing my friends, I always send them the update from the platform to let them know that there is hope, that, people will intervene. So I got someone kicked off Twitter completely 2 weeks ago. I woke up in the morning and had the little thing telling me, and I leaned over and I said to my wife, I got someone kicked off Twitter, and she goes, oh, it's a good day for you. Because she knew it would make me so happy. I was like, that guy was a jerk. He didn't deserve Twitter. And I mean, you got to work hard to actually get kicked off Twitter, honestly. Okay. So again, if you have questions, throw them in. If you disagree, if you feel like I'm saying something weird, throw it in. We'll talk about it some more. Let's talk about, just talk about kindness and being a good person. How about that for a little bit? I think we've undersold how rare kindness is in the world and how transformative it is. So in fact, probably most of us don't have a good definition for kindness and what it means. So let me define it first. I would say kindness is this. The word kindness in English is related to the word kin, right? Like kinfolk, which is a word that means family. So kindness is the act of treating someone as if they are your family. And that could be a single act. It could be a month. It could be your life. So my best friend who died from cancer, like it was a kindness for our family to walk through that journey with her. That's how we would have treated family. She treated us the same way. We had a relationship of kindness, right? We were family to each other. Now, if I'm driving along on the street and I see someone on the side of the road with a flat tire, I might or might not stop, right? But if it was my mom, obviously I'm going to stop, right? We're kin, we're family. It's my mom. So kindness is me stopping for a stranger. That's an act of kindness. So kindness on the internet is actually surprisingly rare, but it's this time when we extend to others that we treat them kind of above and beyond with love and care in a way that we don't expect from strangers. It's not typical, that we maybe sometimes don't even expect from friends. It's kindness. So that can be something simple. It can be something really, really small. It could be you see someone on the internet being piled on, right? Doesn't even matter the reason. So it could be someone's getting piled on because a bunch of people are sexist, right? Then I will like sometimes just jump in and send a note to that person that says, hey, you don't deserve that. These people are being jerks. Just that. That's it. That's a kindness. Now, is that sufficient? I don't know. Maybe you want to do more, but that can be a kindness. You can even do kindness to people who are terrible. Sometimes I see people in the news who have done wrong things and are rightfully receiving a lot of grief for it. People coming after them, telling them how evil they are, what bad things they've done. And again, this is stuff that is deserved. Like this is truth that is being said to them. Sometimes I'll find someone like that and I'll just send them an email privately and say like, look, I know a lot of people are piling on. If you need someone to talk to, I'm available. That's it. It's kindness. That's all. And then sometimes it can be something that seems small that becomes something big. And this was, I mentioned this morning in my little video that went out, some of you may have seen, that I had something that went viral. And it was this. One day I found I don't know if you know what a sky lantern is. It's like a hot air balloon sort of, but it's made out of a paper bag, essentially. Really common in Asian cultures. So you put a flame underneath and it lights up and it flies, right? One of those crashed in my front yard and it had a note on it that said, I love you, Dad. I miss you so much. And a heart. And this woman's name's Steph. And obviously her dad had passed, right? I didn't know anything about her, no way to contact her. There's a couple other things written on there. But I was really moved by it. I have 3 daughters, and short story is I just wrote a short letter, like an open letter. I said, open letter to Steph, whose Skyliner crashed in my yard, right? And just said, here's some things I think your dad would have wanted to say to you if he was able, right? That he loves you, he's proud of you, that he wants good things for your life. It's stuff that any good father wants for his daughter. Put it online. And it ended up becoming this thing that got spread all over the world because people were really moved by, people who had lost their dads, people who had dads that were hard to connect to, like things like that. It was literally a half hour of work for me. And it became this thing. And that girl, Steph, we eventually met. She found me and we became friends. We're still friends. She's taken my daughters to the movies, right? She's come out to meet me and my family. I've been out to meet her and her family. It's just a small act of kindness, tiny act of kindness that changes the world. That was social media. I mean, obviously it was technically snail mail to start, I guess. But then it became social media when I put it on the internet. So kindness can change the world. That's one. The second thing I would just say, and this is connected, is be a good person, be the good guy, right? If there's good guys and bad guys, be on the side of the good guys. I was on Facebook the other day, and one of my Facebook friends who's a woman had shared something, and there was this guy who was just coming in and belittling her and being a jerk. And he's the kind of guy, sometimes you click on someone's profile and you see like, when do they engage? Oh, he only engages when women say something and he's always a jerk. Like obviously he has issues, right? And so I sent her a private note And I said, hey, I'm going to start engaging with this guy. I want you to know you're not alone, and that what you've said is really smart and good, and this guy's being a jerk. And if you want me to back off, just say so. And then I jumped into the comments with this guy. This guy hated it, of course, because he's not there to talk to men. He's there to harass women. And at the end, she ended up unfriending the guy. And I had friended him once upon a time as well. And neither of us really knew him very well, but, we were friends on the internet. And it was one of these things at the end when she told me she almost never unfriends people. She's like, I unfriended that guy. I was like, you know what? This was like what I was saying earlier. I don't want anyone to think that I'm okay with what this dude does. So I unfriended him too. It was a little thing, right? It was a little thing. Just jumping in and saying, I'm on your side here. Sometimes it's literally just pointing out bad behavior. When someone comes in and is just calling names, let's say, that you just come in and say, that's not really an argument. You're just calling names. Literally just that can be enough to protect someone, to help someone. Now, it's not always safe to do, right? And we're all from different backgrounds. We all have different sensitivities, different histories. So I'm not saying you have to do it that way. What I'm saying is, if more of the time on social media, you're the good guy than the bad guy, then you're making the world a better place. I think that's good. Let's see. Okay, I'm going to speed through a couple more things, but if you have questions, please throw them in. Let's see. Train people around you in your spaces. I've discovered that a lot of people, it's just never occurred to them. They haven't thought about it. And so sometimes you can actually help people understand that they're not behaving well by just telling them what your expectations are. That's it. So I have people that I've gone to and I've just said to them, you are not allowed to speak that way in this space. That's mine, right? On my wall, in my area. If you're my follower on social media, whatever. And a lot of times they'll come back with something like, oh, it's a free country, blah, blah, blah. It's like, no. That's not what we're talking about. This isn't a freedom of speech issue. What I'm saying is there are expectations in our community of how you behave. Doesn't mean you're not free to be a jerk. Just means you're not allowed to be one. Which that makes no sense. That's like saying opposite things. But basically just letting them know, don't be that way. There was a guy that the only thing, oh no, I'll tell you this in a minute. Okay. So just train people. Like sometimes assume maybe they just don't know how to be a good person on the internet. Sometimes I'll just tell people, I'll literally just say to them, the way you're reacting makes you seem like this kind of person. Is that what you intend? Right? Just letting them know. It seems like you're mooning everyone right now. Do you want to show us that? Is that what you're trying to do? Okay. And connected to this, okay, is this idea. The person who you are online is you. There are a bunch of people who think that they can behave one way online and that doesn't reflect on their character or who they are. And that's just not true. It's just not the case, right? The internet is a place. So if you have a friend who's really kind and wonderful in a religious context, let's say, and they're fine in class, but if you go out with them to a concert, they're complete jerks. They're like doing horrible things. You can't just look at them and go, oh, that's a good person, right? No, you have to embrace that the person they are at the concert is part of who they are as human beings. They're not just the nice person in the religious context. They're not just the okay person in the class context. They're also this horrible person at the concert. And this is all part of who they are. And there are these people who think, oh, I can go online and harass people or be cruel or make terrible jokes. That's not a reflection of who I am, but it is. It is. And that's part of knowing ourselves, is recognizing that, there's this old Jewish proverb that says, out of the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks, that the words we produce comes because of something inside of us, of who we are. And that's true in social media. What we choose to post, what we choose to type, the videos we choose to make, that's the overflow of who we are. And that it reveals something about our internal person. So just remember, who you are online is you. And that's a way it can be used as a tool to see ourselves. Like the TV show Black Mirror, that's what they're saying, right? When you look at a screen, it's a mirror. It's showing you something about who you are. And that's a diagnostic tool. It's a way we can recognize ourselves and say that that's who I am. That is who I am. It's part of me. So sort of the inverse rule of that is remembering that on the other side of the screen, there's another human being. So there are times where I get so furious at someone and they just become a position in an argument online. And that's rarely the case. There was a guy that I was having a lot of trouble with because all he posted about was politics, his politics, which I found his politics really regressive and terrible. And he hated mine, of course, too. And so we would just fight over politics. And finally, I just told him, I was like, you never talk about anything else online. Like, do you have a family? Do you have hobbies? And he wouldn't, like, if I posted a funny story about my kids, he'd never comment on that. He'd only comment if I said something political-ish that he felt was political. So I was like, are you a human being? Like, are you just a robot? Like, literally, are you a bot? And he was like, no, I'm a human being and I have other things. And I was like, why do you never talk about it? Like, what's up with that? And he really had no answer. And so I unfriended him. No, but he actually sent me a note later. He was like, thank you for saying that. Like, I'm realizing that there are other things I need to share about. I need to bring my whole person in here. So there can be this negative side of it. Just remembering when someone's being really negative, when you're having bad feelings toward them, just remember, what if their mom just died? That literally happened to me once. I was in a fight with someone, and then I found out their mom had died a week and a half before, and they were on the internet just kind of venting. They just needed a place to just say whatever they wanted. I felt bad. Gosh, a month ago, there was a woman who was just posting weird conspiracy theories. I've known her since I was a child. Like, I went to middle school with her kids, and I just put a couple comments like, I don't understand what you're saying. Why are you saying these things? Seems really hurtful. Seems really hateful. And her daughter wrote me, and okay, I'm going to get to your question in just a second. Her daughter wrote me and was like, hey, mom is entering stages of Alzheimer's. That's what's happening. And I was like, oh, shoot. Like, then I felt bad about my comments. I don't think what she was posting was right, but also she's not in a place to understand what I'm saying back to her. Like, she literally doesn't get it, which is really interesting. So just remembering those people on the other side. On the positive example of that would be like, when you want to learn something, there's so many places you can go on the internet to meet people that are kind of in your same group. So I'm really into writing, right? And I started getting into screenwriting a year and a half ago. I've met all these big name writers through the internet. So I've become friends with the guy who wrote Detective Pikachu, literally just because I sent him a note, through Twitter, and we became buddies. So things like that. Let's see. Walter says, do people ever express a lot of anger towards you online? Yes, they do. And because I'm sure they do, how do you handle it? Different things, right? Some of it depends on context. Do we have a relationship? Because if so, I'll usually try to diffuse it. If it's someone who doesn't know me at all, I have kind of a complicated, do I have the emotional space to deal with it? It's one of my first questions. Because if I don't, and I don't know them, I literally, okay, I think this is appropriate to say, but I've had to learn this motto for myself. There are certain people that no matter what you say will always be angry. No matter what you say will never agree with you. No matter what you say, they're not there to have a relationship. They're not there to grow. They're not there to help you grow. They're there because they're angry. And my motto there that one of my friends, my current best friend, helped me come up with is screw those guys. Like, I don't owe them anything. And I need to embrace that. And that's okay. To just let those people go. And sometimes that's what I have to do. That's not the easiest thing for me, but that's something I've had to embrace. There are legitimately people in this country who have my face on a dartboard, and that's okay. That's all right. That's all right. There's a bunch of other people that have my picture on, whatever the opposite of a dartboard is, a place that they remove darts from. So yeah. And then Nathan, let's see. Nathan says, I feel like a lot of what you talked about with showing kindness and engaging in your space is very relevant with Facebook and Twitter. But what would you say we should behave in media such as Instagram and TikTok, where there isn't much interaction apart from liking and singular comments, mainly because you don't have much of a following? Great question, Nathan. So let's see, two things. One, I would say, so let me do it backwards. I'll answer your second question first. Okay, not much of a following. It's kind of hard, right? You can feel like the things I'm saying or doing don't matter much. And I would just push you back toward this idea that they really do, because it's a picture of who you are, right? As a person, and that you may have little or no followers, but that doesn't mean your act of kindness or your presence is not something of value, or that it's not valuable for the people who are connected to you. I don't believe that. I see people all the time with these gigantic followers that are creating nothing of value in the world. I would much rather have 6 followers and have something beautiful than have 6 million and just be creating repetitive garbage. And I know that that's not particularly satisfying when you have 6 followers, but that's my honest opinion. So, and then things like Instagram and TikTok, I would say this. Look, what is your purpose again, right? Why are you engaging in this? So let's say on Instagram, you're like, I just want to share pictures of my day. It's like every day I'm doing a new picture. Cool. That's great. That's a cool project. Is it doing the thing you've designed it for? Are you using Instagram in the way you mean to? There are people on TikTok who are actually really kind. What is that guy's name? Korean Dad. Do you know this guy? Did I say his? I'm not sure if that's his handle. But what he does is he's Korean. He's an older guy. He's my age or older. What he does, he just does these really kind, encouraging messages. Yeah, wholesome. Allison says, yeah, exactly. He's like the guy that you like sign on and it's like, what is Korean Dad saying? And he's like, hey, you're good enough. You got this. People love you and care about you because of who you are, not because of who they want you to be. And you're like, oh, thanks, Korean Dad. Man, I feel better. Right. So there's stuff like that out there. And then sometimes, you know what? You're like, I just want to make videos of me making baskets, increasingly difficult trick shots. Cool, man. Be you. That's awesome. Those trick shot guys are cool. You're like, I just want to make people laugh. There's something beautiful about that. Do it. That's great. So I think, yeah. And then, so sometimes places like Instagram and TikTok, it's not so much how you respond to things, maybe always. Although TikTok has a lot of those, like you're responding to other videos and you're doing duets and all those things. So some of the questions might be, are you just being mean when you do those things? Are you being kind? There are a lot of people who've made a following out of just being mean. That's just true. And there's always going to be an audience for that, but it's not making the world a better place, Okay. Let me know if that didn't answer you, Nathan. All right. I'll give you one more note here and then I'm going to wrap up. And that's this. Anonymity. Some of us choose not to use our real names. Now, if you want to find me on social media on almost every platform, I just use my name, which is practically anonymous because it's hard to spell, right? But if you can spell my name, you can find me on Twitter. You can find me on all the different places I am, except TikTok, because I am purely a consumer on TikTok. I make nothing. So TikTok's like, I need to unwind. I need to see some videos of whales. I need to see some people doing parkour. That's the other thing that's on my TikTok. I was like, human beings can do amazing things. And also whales are just naturally amazing. All they do is swim and like eat very, very tiny meals in large quantities. So that's all TikTok is for me. And then I Snapchat, I legitimately only use to talk to my daughters, and that's it. But everything else is public, really. Now, if you need to be anonymous or want to be anonymous, there's not a problem with that. There are people who do need to be anonymous. But I just want to say this: if you're anonymous, if you're not using your real name, you're like Matt 079423 on the internet. fine, but just be aware of this. What anonymity does is removes our social connections. The Legend 27, that's a really good one. It removes our connections into community. So that does two things. One, it makes us feel as if we're not accountable for what we do, right? So it puts us back in that space of this isn't really me. This is the Legend 27. It's someone else who can say and do what they want with impunity. It's not true. It's not true. It's still you. And there still will be consequences for your actions at some point. And the second thing is, it's much, much easier to be misunderstood when people don't see you as a person or don't know who you are. Because we in communication, we use context to discover what people mean, right? Like there are certain things that I could say, if I said it really hurts to wear high heels and I'm completely anonymous, you'd be like, oh, I don't know, person doesn't like high heels. If you know it's Matt Michelotto saying it, you're like, well, one, Matt's a man. Two, his feet are incredibly wide. Three, why is he wearing high heels? Right? It gives you the context to understand what I'm saying, because you know a little bit about who I am. So I think there's this piece that we have to understand that when you're anonymous, things you say, like critiques, sound much worse when you're anonymous, because in the absence of understanding of who you are, people tend to take things more harder, not more harder, just harder when you're anonymous. So it's just something to consider if you're anonymous online. So what do you want to change in the world? I think is a really important question. What do you want to change in your relationships and the world around you? And how can you leverage the tool of social media to do that is one of the big questions. So I'm going to stop there. If you have other questions, I think do we have time or we're done to do a couple
Go
of
ahead.
questions?
Yeah. Does anybody have any questions for Matt?
I'll just say as you're thinking or typing, my philosophy on the internet is I'm always glad to be connected to more people. So don't feel weird. Oh, is it okay if I follow Matt on this or that thing or send him a private message? Or no, I'm thrilled. Please do. You're welcome to reach out. And obviously, we have a lot in common in a variety of ways. Just, I went to UC Riverside. I know many of you, you're in the Inland Empire somewhere. I went to college, I like SpongeBob. I like whales on TikTok, whatever. Yeah, so please do feel free to reach out anytime. Yeah.
Hey, well, that's great. And I just wanted to say a few things that I got from your talk, Matt. So the first thing that I thought was about my own character. I thought about my own character. Your talk made me think about that. Like my character shouldn't be changing from space to space. So when I'm here at Crew, or when I'm driving in my car, like I need to be a friendly driver, right? Like that was a big truth that sunk in, and that definitely applies to social media too. And the other question that I had that I think is a great question for us all to think of is what does my online presence or social media accounts say about me? I'm going to say that one more time. Like, what does my online social media say about me? And I thought that application question, it definitely helped me. And some things that I came up with, like, is man, I can be a little passive, but also I think people might think I'm unavailable because of my social media presence for my personal accounts. And yeah, so I think that's a good question to ask ourselves.
Two quick questions. Someone wrote me privately, so I won't say who it is. But they just asked, what about being a spectator? Like, what if you do nothing to intervene? Like, I assume when something bad is happening, sometimes that's the right call to make, right? There are times where you may feel unsafe that you may not have time, that you may not want to engage, you may be emotionally exhausted. It's okay. There's always something wrong on the internet, right? So you can't intervene in everything. I told this person who wrote me, I do have some friends that I know, like literally one of my friends, he's like a professional good guy troll. So if I'm like, oh, this is a really terrible conversation, I do not have time to fix this, I'll legitimately just send him a screenshot and say, go find this conversation. He's like, oh yeah, I get to go be a good troll. And he just jumps in there and takes care of it. So getting some friends like that can be really great. And then we also have the question, how do you decide how much time to spend on social media, especially if you're posting more controversial stuff? Okay. Yeah, how much time I spend on social media is a variety of things, right? One of them is, what is my purpose? So again, when I'm opening TikTok, I'm thinking to myself, why am I about to watch this? It's like, I'm tired and I just need 10 minutes of wholesome content. And that's what my TikTok is. And that's cool. So that's what I do, right? Sometimes if something horrible's happened, so a lot of times on my Facebook, for instance, I'll write out some of my thoughts when there's a national tragedy, when someone says something really egregious in a political sphere or online that I feel like needs to be addressed in my community. I set aside time for it because I know it's going to take processing and blah, blah, blah. So even this last week, actually, I said something on Twitter and my friend said, are you going to post this on Facebook? And I said, no, I don't have time to babysit it on Facebook. Just a different amount of time is required on Facebook than Twitter. He's like, well, I'm going to put it on my Facebook. And I was like, that's fine. But you have to deal with your people then, right? It's not me dealing with his people. I did a little bit. And then I do this actually, and this is for me as well as my community. Usually, if you look back through my Facebook, this isn't as true in recent months, but usually if I say something really hard one day, so let's say I say one day I'm like, let's talk about rising violence against Asian Americans and Asian and Pacific Islander people in the United States. And I say some hard things about that, right? I hope encouraging things depending on the population you're in, difficult things depending on the population you're in. Those can be hard conversations. We have to navigate a lot of things. There's a lot of different emotions depending on where you are, blah, blah, blah. But important conversation that requires emotional engagement. The next day, I might legitimately say, today is the day I want to see pictures of your pets, right? And I'll get 3 billion comments that are just pictures of various animals. What I usually do is if I'm doing a hard day one day, or one post, then I'll follow up with something that lets us relax, get to know each other as human beings, right? Pictures of your pets. Who's going to hate your pet? Unless you're you're like, I have an illegal Komodo dragon I stole from Thailand and like brought over. Then you're like, okay, something's wrong with this guy. But it's almost always animals that are normal and not illegal to have, right? So cats and dogs and snakes and bunnies and hedgehogs, whatever. So that lets people connect, and it's also just, it doesn't require the same sort of emotional engagement. So there are times when I don't talk about something hard because I don't have the emotional space to help my community process it. And I think that's okay too. It's just part of the understanding of who I am, right? And using social media in that way. So, yeah. So I heard there's a raffle. A raffle, is that what it is?
Yes. Thank you so much, Matt. And yeah, we've all got so much to think about, and we appreciate your time. There is a raffle, and before we get into the raffle,